chapter looks at the idea of organizational structure, and it really focuses on the importance of organizing as one of the key areas of effective management. We quote the management guru Peter Drucker at the opening of this chapter, and his point that organizations can't survive if they only can be run by geniuses and supermen. They need to be organized in a manner that uses average human beings, and that's what this chapter is about. Winston Churchill, the famous Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, once said that democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others that have been tried. What we're going to see in this chapter is that all organizational structures have trade-offs that need to be carefully considered. One of the oldest recorded stories relevant to modern organizational concepts comes from biblical times. After exiting Egypt, Moses was in a difficult position of acting as the sole judge of the Hebrew people. This was a huge task, as some have estimated that the population could have exceeded 1 million people at that time. Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, noticed the problem occurring with Moses acting as the sole authority on all matters with such a massive number of people, and he worried that Moses would wear himself out carrying such a heavy load alone. Fortunately, Jethro had some very practical advice. He counseled Moses that he should act as a representative of the people and teach laws, decrees, and principles to minimize troubles and act as an example of how people should live and duties should be performed. He would then set up others to serve as judges. The difficult cases would be handled by Moses, but simpler cases would be handled by representatives. This is perhaps the first recorded example of hierarchy of authority, an arrangement of individuals based on rank. We still have the same idea today in the justice system, where lower courts handle easier-to-solve cases, and the Supreme Court handles only the most difficult cases. Hierarchy of authority is still an important concept in managing individuals within organizations. For example, it's used in the military to organize based on rank, such that individuals of lower rank are responsible to commanders at a higher rank. The number of employees each manager oversees directly is referred to as their span of control. In most armies, this is 8 to 6 individuals. A concept called unity of command is used in many organizations to refer to scenarios where an individual would only report to one superior to avoid confusion and conflicting orders. Division of labor is the idea that if you divide a task into smaller and simpler tasks, it's more efficient than creating most products one at a time. Famous economist Adam Smith described a pen factory where one person alone could create 20 pens. However, when divided into multiple steps, 10 workers could make 48,000 pens. Henry Ford applied this idea of division of labor into the mass production process of creating cars at Ford. The concept of bureaucracy is a key one in regard to understanding the organization of modern firms. Today, the word bureaucracy is often negatively associated with administrative inefficiency. A lot of college students find out about bureaucracy during registration. This is a time-honored custom in colleges where students are sent all around the university and back in order to prove that if they really want to enroll in a class, then they need to try very hard to figure out exactly how. The word bureaucracy did not always have the negative stigma it has today. Bureaucracy simply refers to the needed structure, rules, and regulations that control activity in most large organizations and government agencies. The term bureaucracy comes from the German word Büro, which means office. In the early 1900s, Max Weber described what he called an ideal bureaucracy, consisting of a number of characteristics that would be beneficial to employees at a time when hiring, firing, and other management decisions were often very arbitrary and nepotistic. We already touched on the idea of division of labor, which can be efficient when dividing up jobs to specialists can lead to increases in productivity. But this idea poses problems too, because individuals might act as if certain tasks aren't their jobs, even when they have the ability to help those they interact with, such as customers, suppliers, and other employees. Hierarchy of authority exists when it's clear to whom each employee reports. This situation wasn't always evident in Weber's time, because in many family firms you might have a different member of the family that felt empowered to give orders or even terminate employees. Of course, passing the buck can be one of the downsides to a clear hierarchy of authority as well. Formal selection techniques ensure employees are hired based on pre-specified and spelled-out qualifications. This is generally a beneficial quality for an organization to have, but it could make hiring decisions take longer than necessary, which could result in not being able to select some excellent applicants fast enough in some cases. Many organizations have numerous rules and regulations to guide the conduct of their employees. For example, restaurant employees are required to wash their hands before exiting restrooms. Such rules can be very valuable, but they can also lead to inefficiencies if they become outdated. Finally, organizations in an ideal bureaucracy should act rationally where information from the CEO flows down to lower level employees and valuable information always makes it to the ear of an observant top manager. In reality, this doesn't always occur, and all of us face biases that keep us from always making rational decisions. There is some element of bureaucracy in almost all organizations today, and managerial decisions concerning organization consist of a series of trade-offs versus an ideal scenario. One key management challenge that many organizations face relates to creating the best structure to organize the many components of the firm. Although this condition doesn't always occur, the way activities and organizations are structured should provide a good match with the firm's strategy. In a simple structure, a single manager who might also be the entrepreneur who founded the business makes all the decisions. There is very little formalization of structure and responsibilities in this structure. Troubles can arise if the single manager becomes overwhelmed, and the growth of the firm may be slow as entrepreneur founders are often reluctant to empower others. In functional structures, managers oversee specific areas of production. Companies frequently switch from simple to functional structures as they grow. The TV show The Office focuses largely on the functional structure shown in the Scranton branch of the fictional paper merchant Dunder Mifflin, where sales, accounting, and HR are divided into different functions handled by different personalities. The trade-off with this structure is that it may not be efficient for corporations with multiple products. A multidivisional structure is organized where managers are responsible for different geographies or different businesses. This structure is frequently used when you have multiple product lines or markets. For example, limited brands includes Bath & Body Works, Victoria's Secret, and a number of other different companies within their corporate structure. Ideally, some element of synergy would exist that makes the corporation more efficient by holding the different brands. For example, limited brands might benefit by purchasing marketing research that would be useful for their different brands that all serve similar demographics. The strategic business unit structure is an extension of the multidivisional structure where each division is treated as its own business and isn't closely integrated with the other businesses. In the strategic business unit structure, each business unit may have its own strategy. For example, the company Fortune Brands once operated 3 different SBUs: premium spirits such as Jim Beam, Knob Creek, and Maker's Mark, golf brands such as Titleist, Pinnacle, and FootJoy, and office brands such as Moen and Masterlock. In recent years, they decided to sell off their other SBUs and just focus on their premium spirit brands. The matrix structure blends the functional and multidivisional structures. This can be useful for engineering firms that use personnel for different projects. However, as shown in the movie Office Space, problems can exist when unity of command is violated, as is the case when the main character, Peter Gibbons, has multiple bosses. The network structure involves outsourcing many functions such as marketing, production, or sales. Nike, who outsources much of their sales, production, and marketing, provides an example of a successful firm using this structure. The trade-off with this structure is that many value-added elements of the good or service are a function of other firms that may lack consistency. In one scene in this chapter, David examines elements of organizational structure in the Star Wars series. The Empire was an example with very centralized power held by Darth Vader and the Emperor. In contrast, the Rebel Alliance seemed to have a number of individuals who held power depending on the specific task or mission. One of the points of this scene was to demonstrate that even in fictional galaxies far, far away, you see familiar elements of organizational structure. In the final scene of this chapter, Atlas and David visit a job fair. I think this was one of my favorite scenes to write, probably because when I was working on my undergraduate degree, I was the guy who pretty much went there to get free pens and frisbees because I really wasn't that up to speed on how to take advantage of these kinds of events. We use this scene to describe the concept of fit within organizations. Earlier in the chapter, we discussed the need for fit between a firm's strategy and structure. In this scene, we look at the fit between individuals in different jobs and organizations. Individuals tend to gravitate toward jobs that fit with their knowledge, skills, ability, and interests. This is important both for the potential employer and employee. Employers need to find ways to identify and attract employees that fit with their job. Employees need to keep in mind what will make them the most satisfied in a job. It's probably not just money. As with jobs, people tend to gravitate to organizations where they fit. Both aspects of individuals, such as personality characteristics, and aspects of the organization, such as the organization's culture, influence the quality of the fit. Assessing fit is a key element measured at colleges and universities in the sorority and fraternity rush process. The final concept discussed in this chapter is the ASA framework, which is useful for explaining how certain organizations are able to create distinctive cultures over time. The attraction part of the framework notes that individuals are attracted to jobs that fit their personality and passions. The selection element explains that organizations try to select individuals that they perceive fit with the organization's culture. Individuals that ultimately don't fit with the job or organization are either fired or quit in the attrition stage. So this idea of understanding the alignment of a firm's strategy and structure is an important one for organizational functioning, and it's important for individuals to understand how they fit into the greater structure of the organization where they work. In the movie Office Space, they show management consultants coming into a high-tech firm, and at one point the consultant asks an employee, "What is it you do around here?" Knowing your role within an organization is important because it demonstrates your ability to answer this question and outline how you add value to the firm and its goals. I hope this chapter has provided a few insights to help you begin to answer this question, as well as help you understand the challenges and trade-offs associated with modern organizational structures.